Good evening, and thank you for attending tonight's program, Discovering Dr. King's Dream, Then and Now. The League of Women Voters of Delaware and Create Safe Space is proud to present this virtual tour of Dr. King's civil rights journey through Salem and Montgomery, Alabama, led by the multi-talented Miss Wanda Battle. Lori Yadin and Denise Davis are two talented and innovative board members of the League of Women Voters. Through their creative genius, we bear witness to what will be a transformational virtual journey in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. As we watch tonight's presentation together, the League of Women Voters reminds everyone of the importance of protecting and strengthening the sacred right to vote that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. fought for. I'm confident you will enjoy this presentation, Discovering Dr. Martin Luther King's Dream, Then and Now. Thank you. Lori?
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for being here and joining us for this wonderful event. Thank you, Gwen, for your warm welcome. I am Lori Yadin, and it is my honor tonight to introduce our wonderful guide for this evening's program, Wanda Battle. The program will consist of a virtual tour followed by an opportunity for questions and discussion. We ask that you please type any questions that bubble up along the presentation into the chat so that we can share them once the tour is completed. Montgomery, Alabama is Miss Wanda's hometown, and one of her passions is to share the historical significance of Montgomery and Selma, Alabama, the stories of the many let me start this again, sorry. Montgomery, Alabama is Miss Wanda's hometown, and one of her passions is to share the historical significance of Montgomery and Selma, Alabama, the stories of the many sacred places, and the important civil rights leaders whose voices and actions we continue to listen to and honor today. I also know that another of Miss Wanda's passions is to sing, and I hope that we will be blessed to hear her voice, not just in speech, but also in song tonight. Wanda is a graduate of Spelman College and completed masterwork in faith-based counseling from the Southern Christian University, now Ambridge University. She is a community builder, committed to love, respect, and care for all people. As my colleague and my friend, I know her to be a warm and bright light, a master storyteller and songstress whose mission is to bring the lived experiences of the past forward, shedding light on the value of holding our history so to inspire us to continue to lift our voices for equal justice, liberty, and freedom for all. So without further delay, I turn this evening over to our wonderful presenter, Miss Wanda Battle.
Hello and good evening, everyone. I am so blessed to be here with every one of you tonight. And Lori, I want to thank you for inviting me into this conversation. And Ms. Gwendolyn Miller, thank you for leading this organization and for extending this very heartfelt opportunity for me to come and share my voice with you all. And before I get started to go into that, I want to just share with you, because it's important for everyone who take tours with me or who I speak to understand the background of where my passion about this has come from. I want to start off by telling you, yes, I graduated from Spelman College in 1977 as a soprano, and singing has been a blessing for me. I've been suicidal twice, and I've been homeless. And I know what that feels like. And all I can tell you is that where for many years, that was shame for me. I was embarrassed to tell anybody about that season of my life because I couldn't get it wrapped around my brain of the decisions I made that got me there. And so once I started touring at Dexter, you all, I can tell you it came full circle. And I found my purpose and I found the meaning for my work in having to go and make that acknowledgement of my past. Because what I came to understand, everybody on this call, human rights, social justice, and civil rights begins with who we are as individuals, who we are as people. And so tonight, as I'm presenting, you all, I want you to get in here and come go with me in a real way. This is not just a presentation to just speak something to you that won't mean anything when you leave this call. I pray that every one of you will find your call and really step into this moment, because for such a time as this, we are needed. Your piece is needed to the puzzle. So with that being said, you all, you have yourselves muted, but I'm going to lead us in this little light of mine, and I don't care if you sing in the key of Z. I want you to come on, sing with me, because I share this song on many of my tours, because not only was it a favorite during the protest and mass meetings here in Montgomery, but it is who we are as individuals. So come on, sing with me. This little light of mine, gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine, yes, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, oh yes, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine all the time. Let it shine, everybody. Let it shine, let it shine. I had a little 8-year-old girl on one of my tours, came up to sing that song, you all, and she added that little part, let it shine all the time, let it shine. And I gave her a high five and said, you rocked that, sister. And so I started adding that in, because let it shine, everybody, all the time. Let it shine. With that having been said, I've got a PowerPoint presentation, and as Lori shared with you, I want to take you on a tour of Montgomery. And even though these are not all of the sites I tour here in Montgomery, but I call it my Montgomery, and I want to just share with you the heart of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Did everybody know that their names were Michael before Martin? Well, they certainly were. Daddy King, as we all called him, Daddy King was originally named by his mother, Michael, because she wanted him to be named after the archangel. But Daddy King had there were two brothers, and whose names were Michael and Luther, his daddy's brothers. And his daddy wanted to name him after the two brothers. But guess who won? Mama. So he was named Michael. So Daddy King was named Michael Luther King Sr. And when he had Dr. King, he named him Jr. When Dr. King was 5 years of age, his father changed their names to honor both his father and the reformist Martin Luther, who nailed the 95 Theses to the door of the Church of Wittenberg. You all remember that in history? Well, if you don't, I understand. We're 65 and older. With that being said, I want to take you on this PowerPoint adventure, so I'm going to go ahead and bring this to our view. Can everybody see that pretty good? And let's see here. Does everybody see that okay? Can you hear me? Lori, can you hear me?
You're going to want to click from the beginning in the upper left.
Upper left. Okay. Oh, yes. There we go. Thank you, ladies. Those are my technicians. Okay, so let me just share with you, because Dexter Avenue King Memorial Baptist Church shut down for tours March 15th of 2020, I was out of work. And so this past March, on March 9th, 2021, I launched my own business. Legendary Tours. Yay, thank you, Jesus. You have to pay the rent and mortgage somehow and take a bath. Well, I launched my business, and you all, it has been so wonderful these past 9 months or 10 months now it has been, that I have been doing a variety of things with my giftings in this area. And so with that, I started off because I just wanted to share with everybody one of my quotes. Many people carry prejudice and fear. Even me, I did, and I still work towards transforming continually. Yet we all benefit when we open our hearts to respect and appreciate one another's differences. Did every one of you know that every one of us are unique and different? There's not one person on the planet that's the same. We're all unique. I even had two identical twins on a tour of mine. And I asked the little boy, I said, have you ever seen yourself somewhere else on the planet? And he said, yes, ma'am. There's my identical twin. And the little twin made this move like, here I am. And they were identical. But do you all know even identical twins are different? There's something unique about every one of us. And God made it so. So love is a lifestyle. That's one of my messages with my company. It's love is a lifestyle, and be love, be light. That's our goal every day, is to be love, be light, because love is a lifestyle. Well, every group that I work with or speak to, I go do background information and I go find out about them. So I know you all are familiar with this. I wanted to know, what is the mission of the League of Women Voters Delaware? What work are they doing? And you all, I want you to know, you all rock this. I love your mission and the work you're doing, working for the informed and active participation of citizens in government. And mission, the League of Women Voters, a nonpartisan political organization, encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues and public policy through education and advocacy. The League of Women Voters' goal is to empower citizens to, what's that, to share communities worldwide?
Yes, to shape communities.
Thank you, to shape communities worldwide. That is a wonderful goal, ladies. And I commend you for the work that you have already done and the work that you're doing. Blessings to every one of you. As we go forward, today we are honoring this weekend a man, a preacher, a husband, a son, a leader, that all of us have come to this conversation to talk about how he has shared his life and his work, his morals and ethics have set a compass for all of us in life. And so we are all taking glimpses and we're gleaning from his wisdom now to keep working and going forward in this work of human rights and social justice. And so we took a title tonight of Discovering Dr. King's Dream, Then and Now. So I tonight want to go and take you through a little journey, because Dr. King, when I first came to Dexter Avenue King Memorial Baptist Church in 2014, I came knowing of Dr. King because my parents had worked here in the Montgomery bus boycott and in the 1960s civil rights movement. However, I never had an opportunity to meet him because I was a bit young for going into the protests and mass meetings. But once I got to Dexter, it's like through all of the teaching and my learning and educating myself and learning from all of the visitors who come to Dexter, who knew Dr. King, who worked in the movement, I have I feel like I really know him in a more intimate way. And it's like I'm taking his message to the world in the way that I can. So this weekend, what day is Dr. King's birthday, somebody? What date is his actual birthday?
January 15th.
Yay! Give some love. Okay, January 15th is Dr. King's birthday, and he would have turned 93 years of age. And so we honor Dr. King, even from heaven, to thank him for coming. This photograph that you're looking at here is him standing on the steps of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. That was the name of the church at the time when he came to Dexter. And you can see he's this young man. He's 25 years of age on this picture. How young he was. Did anybody know Mrs. Coretta Scott King was 27 years of age when they came to Dexter? She was 2 years older than Dr. King. And she was as gracious, as loving and kind and humorous, and down to earth as Dr. King was. And how do I know that? The members at Dexter Church, there are about 9 of them that are still living, who are members of Dexter Church, who were under his pastorate. And they talk very highly of both of them. So I want you all to know that they were not just some icons that we just think of. No, they were real loving and kind people. And so I wanted to share a quote from each one of them tonight so that you can feel their heart. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Isn't that a wonderful golden nugget to use to live your life by? We are the light, everybody on this call, and we are the love. So with that, Dr. Martin Luther King, I thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. And Mrs. Coretta Scott King, this is one of my favorite quotes by her. It says, struggle is a never-ending process. Freedom is never really won. You earn it and win it in every generation. Isn't that powerful? It means that every generation brings their part to the goal of freedom. Everybody is involved from generation to generation in this work towards human rights and social justice so that we really can be the beloved community. So we want to thank Mrs. Coretta Scott King for her wisdom and for her brilliance. And she was such a gracious, beautiful lady, as you can see. This world that you see, we're all holding up. Envision one of those are your hands. 2 of those are your hands holding up the world, because all of us are part of this work. And at this time, I want to welcome you to Montgomery. Lori, I believe, says, well, she's coming in October, I hope. But I hope every one of you will have an opportunity to come to Montgomery to see this history that is here. So I just want to say welcome as we start this virtual tour to see some of the sites that are here in Montgomery that Dr. King impacted, and that not only Dr. King, but many of those who joined that fight and the work for human rights and social justice. And these are places that were a part of that. This is the Alabama State Capitol here in Montgomery, Alabama. And our governor is currently Governor Kay Ivey. And from these steps, as you're looking at the steps, if you visit Montgomery, to the left is Jefferson Davis up at the top of the steps. You can't see him on this picture, but to the right is a statue of Dr. James Marion Sims, the father of gynecology, and John Wyeth, who was his assistant or a co-doctor in that work of gynecology. I'm going to tell you more about that story a little later. But I also want you to know that at the base of these steps is where Dr. King in 1965 delivered his famous "How long, not long" speech. With that, I'm taking you back in time. This is a picture of Dexter Church in the 1800s. And I want to say that originally, you see the design of the steps in the front. This was the original design, but the steps were wooden. And as we go through the presentation, you're going to see that by the time Dr. King came, those steps had been renovated and the position was changed. With that, the church was established in 1877, and they began building this church in 1879. And they paid $270, which is not a lot of money, it sounds like, but during that time, that was a lot of money. So with that, this Black congregation purchased the grounds and began to build, and they completed this church in 1889. And it is still the original church that is here on Dexter Avenue. The original name of Dexter Church was Second Colored Baptist Church. And just to tell you a quick story, this church came out of First Baptist Church, which was an all-white congregation. And First Baptist Church, the white congregation, still exists in Montgomery. However, in 1867, the Black members of that church said they wanted their own church because, remember, slavery was abolished in 1865. So the African-American members of that church said, we would like to establish our own church. And they did just that. And they became Columbus Street Baptist Church first, but then they changed the name to First Colored Baptist Church. And it's located on Ripley Street here in the city. So I'll show you that church in just a little bit. But notice on this picture, everybody, the proximity of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church from the Alabama State Capitol. It's only 1 block away. And I can tell you that was a great concern for many in the white community at the time that the city was selling this property to this Black congregation. They felt that it was too close to the state capitol for them to allow this Black congregation to purchase. But all I can tell you is, but God. Because here we are, 144 years, and Dexter is still existing here. And so with that, being 1 block away, it has proven to be a true blessing to the history of that church. Because as all of you all know, Governor George C. Wallace was one of the segregationists during the 1960s and early 70s that opposed Dr. King and the civil rights movement for quite some time. But I can tell you that on August 2nd, 1979, Governor George C. Wallace was wheeled into Dexter Church, and he apologized to Dexter's congregation. So I just wanted you all to know that tidbit of information. Well, everybody, look at Dexter. This is the way the steps were formed by the time Dr. King came. They had changed from the wooden steps, cascading, to this cinder block design steps. And if you notice, see, there was a house next to the church. When the church was first built, there were houses around it. But it, you know, as they developed the downtown district, it became a part of downtown. And so the houses disappeared and businesses were replaced. So with that, this is a picture. I wanted to share this one with you. This is Deacon John Fagan. Mr. John Fagan is a master artist here in the city of Montgomery. He has murals and art around the city. He retired from Carver High School as one of their art instructors, and he graduated from Alabama State University and is just well known in this city. This is his mural that is in the basement of Dexter Church. tourists from around the world come to see this amazing mural that extends a full wall. It's about 5 panels to this mural. And he completed it in 1980. But it tells the story from Mrs. Rosa Parks's arrest through Dr. King's assassination. And it is very well done. And I called him on yesterday and asked him, I said, Deacon, is it okay if I put your mural and you in my presentation? And he says, absolutely yes. So you all, I want you to know he's 91 years of age and he is still creating masterful art. So I wanted to share that with you all because many times the artist is already passed on before you get to meet them, but he is still very much alive and he's such a beautiful, skilled man. Here in the basement of Dexter as well is the podium that Dr. King delivered his famous How Long, Not Long speech from in 1965, but it was placed on an 18-wheeler flatbed at the foot of the Alabama State Capitol. And that day, if you go out online and look at pictures, it's this very podium that he spoke from that day. And it is in the basement. So during the times that I would tour, I allowed the tourists to stand behind it and recite How Long, Not Long, and take photographs. So you may find pictures out online or TripAdvisor of people standing behind this podium. Then attached to Dexter Church is the parsonage, the house where the pastors live. 12 of Dexter's pastors have lived in the parsonage, in the house. So I went back and I wanted to include a picture of Dr. King and Mrs. King standing in front of the house during the period that he pastored Dexter Church. Currently, there are 3 houses that are here on this corner together. On the corner is the interpretive center that when you come, you're welcomed into that building and you're greeted. It's a gift store and you watch about a 20-minute video telling about the life of Dr. King and those who had lived in this house. And after you've watched the video, they allow you to use the key to open the door to go inside of the house. And this is the original house and it's furnished with most of the furnishings that were Dr. and Mrs. King's. And many visitors find it so wonderful to visit because in the kitchen especially, they play the recording of Dr. King's Epiphany. And as many of you already know, that Epiphany is where he comes home around midnight and he, from a meeting, and he receives a telephone call from someone from the Klan who says, nigga, if you don't get out of town in 3 days, we're gonna kill you. You know, and when Dr. King hangs up the phone, he's just perplexed and there's a fear that comes over him. And he gets a cup of coffee and sits at the table, the kitchen table, and he begins to talk to God. And I'm just paraphrasing, but he's saying to God, God, I believe that the cause you've called me to is right. But right now I feel fear and they're looking to me to lead them. Well, the Holy Spirit begins to speak to him and say, Barton, stand for righteousness. Stand for justice, stand for truth, and God will be with you forevermore. Dr. King explains that the fear left him. And as you sit there hearing his voice and having him share that story, all I can tell you is that there are very few people who are not weeping. I was one of them. I was one of them. And I can say that that epiphany took place on January 27th, 1956. 3 days later, this parsonage was bombed. There was dynamite placed on the steps. So when you walk up the steps to this house to the right, on the porch, you'll see a marker now that tells the story that that's the location where the dynamite was set. And when it blew, the dynamite took out the 2 windows on the right side of the house so that the the windows are different on the left side of the house from the ones on the right. And thank God, Mrs. Coretta Scott King, her dear friend, Mrs. Lucy Williams, who was also a member of Dexter, and Yolanda, the baby you see in her arms, was just about 3 months old at the time. They were not harmed. And so this story really gets you when you think about it, the courage it must have taken for them to accept the charge that and the risks and dangers that were upon their lives. And so these little extra pictures are sharing with you their family life. Dr. King became so very busy, you all, after he became the spokesperson for the Montgomery bus boycott. You can just imagine Mrs. King was the one really rearing the children while he was gone. But I can still say she was very much involved with the happenings. And I remember, if you go out on YouTube, there is a video where the BBC journalists are interviewing Dr. King. And one of the journalists asked them the question, well, what do you think about, how do you protect your wife? You know, because you live with so many dangers, you know? And he says, well, I send her to her mother and father's, or, you know, she goes for a day. And then she calls me back and say, Martin, what's going on? I want to be there. And he says, I finally just got to the place where I let her just make her own decision about being there. Because see, her heart was as committed to the work as Dr. King's. And I want to share with every one of you, the call that was on Dr. King's life was on Mrs. Coretta Scott King's life. And she understood her place in the work. And so she walked side by side with her husband. To this day, I love her, and she is one of my mentors. She is. I love her faith. I love her courage. I love her wisdom. And I offer it to you to honor her as much as you do her husband. With that having been said, in the backyard of the house is the King John's Garden for Reflection. So after you have gone through that tour in the house, then you come out into the backyard, and there are 6 benches in a circle, and each bench has one of these principles in front of it in the pavement: equality, forgiveness, hope, peace, understanding, and unity. Remember these 6, everybody, because long after we're off this call, I want you to reflect on these same principles, because it is essential that every one of us live these right now. Yes. So with that, I just wanted to share that with you. It's so wonderful to have that little place where you can just, after you have wept sorely in the kitchen, you can come out and just reflect in the backyard, and it's so serene there. Well, this is another location, the Legacy Museum. Is everybody familiar with attorney Brian Stevenson? I know Lori told me today that attorney Brian Stevenson's family is from Milton, Maryland. Is that right, Lori? Milton,
Delaware.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Milton, Delaware.
Thank you for that correction. That Brian Stevenson is such an amazing human being. He's so humble. I hope every one of you on this call will have an opportunity to meet him and or to come to Montgomery to visit both of these museums that the Equal Justice Initiative have opened here. I thank God that they were led to bring them to Montgomery, because it is perfect that they should be here in what we call the birthplace of civil rights, modern civil rights. The Legacy Museum moved on October 1st. It officially opened in this new location. The old location was an 11,000 square foot museum. This new location is 44,000 square feet. And if you could imagine that they couldn't have topped the previous museum, okay, they've done it. Come to see the amazing museum they have placed here in Montgomery to tell the story of lynchings in America and mass incarceration and the devastation of both in this nation. His premise, and I totally agree, the truth must be told. We must come to a place as Americans, not as white people, Black people, Asians, Latinos. We must all come to that place where we want to share and embrace and understand one another's history, because all history is ours. Do you know all history is connected? And so I want you, as much as you can, and keep educating yourself. And I'll remind you of that again a little later. But the Legacy Museum is a wonderful museum. In that same pavilion is Patty George's Kitchen, which is a restaurant that you can sit and have Southern cuisine, fried chicken, macaroni, cheese, collard greens, black-eyed peas. Anybody hungry? But they have a wonderful restaurant there. And then their gift store is located in this same building. So we invite you to come to see this new Legacy Museum. The Memorial for Peace and Justice is not in the same location as the Legacy Museum, but they have, the Equal Justice Initiative provides a shuttle bus that takes you between the two museums. And this memorial is absolutely powerful as well. This is some of the art that you see on the grounds. You see some of the slaves and the anguish of being sold away from one another as a family. And then you have this artist with the hands up are explaining how that Atlantic slave trade, them coming over to America, and now we're in this era of police brutality, saying stop, don't shoot. And so this artist is presenting that mindset that we're going through in human rights right now in this country. Another location that I have made one of my tour locations is the Montgomery Former City Jail. This jail is now the location of our sanitation department. And I just felt, everybody, that it was very short-sighted that the city of Montgomery did not make this a historical landmark. But guess what? I'm advocating that it becomes one. So I started taking all of my tours to visit this former jail, because this is the jail where, when you see the picture of Mrs. Rosa Parks being fingerprinted, it's from this jail. And it's also the location where the picture that you see Dr. King being arrested, and they are twisting the police are twisting his arm behind his back, and he's bent over the counter. It's from this former jail. It's not from our current police department. And so I believe that they need to renovate this building and make it a city, if not a national landmark. But the story needs to be told, because there is no marker that tells the story of this building at this time. But we keep working on it. With that being said, I'm bringing you to First Baptist Church, which is also called Brick a Day Church. This church is the one I was referencing that Dexter came out of. This church came out of the white First Baptist Church that's located downtown Montgomery. And this is the church that separated from the white church in 1867. And they marked this location, and was originally called Columbus Street Baptist Church, because the first church structure faced to the side, which is Columbus Street, on the side of this church. However, it burned, and in 1910, they built this new structure, and now it faces Ripley Street. The pastor at the time told everybody, we're not in financial position to build a new church, so I need everybody to bring a brick a day until we rebuild this church. Well, that's what they did. And you all, if you could see this church up close, you would find it amazing. The architecture is absolutely beautiful and detailed, and you can see to some extent, even looking at this photograph, that it is masterful work. So this is Brickaday Church. But I also want you to know that this is the church that on May 21st, 1961, when the Freedom Riders arrived to Montgomery, this is the church that they were, that was attacked by a mob of whites from across the street. And they turned over cars and firebombed the church, and about 1,500 people were caught inside of the church overnight. If you look at this picture, that's Dr. King standing up in the middle of the doorway, and Reverend Ralph Abernathy is to his right, 2 men over. But this is one of the photographs from that night when they were attacked, and Dr. King called Robert Kennedy, and Robert Kennedy sent in the U.S. Marshal, and he federalized the Alabama National Guard. Okay, we're going to move on. I'm looking at my time a little bit because I do want us to get our discussion in and have enough time for that too. Well, welcome to the riverfront. You all, this is the tunnel that leads down to the Alabama River. And the Alabama River is where historically slaves and cotton were brought in on riverboats to be bought and sold at the fountain, the city fountain. And so slaves would come up through this fountain to be sold into the city town square. But I wanted to share this with you because this is another favorite for people to come and to find enjoyment, because there's a riverboat that is for entertaining that's there. Well, this little church you see here is Mount Zion African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church. That's a mouthful. But you all, this is the church my family attended when I grew up here in Montgomery, when I was born. This is the church we were a part of. This church is historic because on December 5th, 1955, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which is the day of Mrs. Rosa Parks's hearing and the same day of the one-day bus boycott, that afternoon, a meeting was held at Mount Zion to form the Montgomery Improvement Association. Dr. King became the first president of that organization. That was held here at this meeting, at this church. And then that night at 7 o'clock, 2 blocks from Mount Zion is Holt Street Baptist Church. They are both on Holt Street. The mass meeting, that about 5,000 people arrived. And I presented these articles and photographs because this is Dr. King speaking that night at that first mass meeting. And was it quite an event. And as you can see in the newspaper article, 5,000 people showed up for that mass meeting. And it started the 381 days of walking and carpooling here in Montgomery. Black people stayed off of the buses. About 85% of Montgomery's ridership on the buses were domestics. They were women who worked in the white homes and Black men who worked for whites or as laborers. And so with that income gone, it almost shut the bus company down, and it made an impact. So they were successful. And with the beginning of it came with Mrs. Rosa Parks on December 1st, 1955. I just want to show you the bus stop because I share this on tours. The bus stop where Mrs. Parks picked up the bus on that day downtown. And this marker tells the story of her picking up the bus, and the bus went around the corner, and I'm going to show you Rosa Parks Library and Museum in just a moment. But the library, where the library is now, is where she was arrested. But she boarded the bus at this location, and Mrs. Parks's Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority placed this marker to note the place where she boarded the bus. So that's here downtown Montgomery. This is me standing at Mrs. Rosa Parks's apartment. You all, these years I had lived here in Montgomery and had never gone over to her apartment, but this last year I think in February or March, I went over to find her apartment and I found it. And I want you all to know that they have left the apartment pretty much in the order that she left it when she moved out. Her mother and her husband lived with her in this apartment. It was originally called Cleveland Avenue Court Apartments. And so I like to take visitors there, and you can always go inside. This is the Rosa Parks Library and Museum. This is where she was arrested, here at this corner. And I find it so amazing that now this is the location of her library and museum. With that being said, back in the day, in the 1950s, when she was arrested, this was the Empire Movie Theater. And across the street from the Empire Movie Theater was the Paramount Movie Theater, and both of them were white movie theaters. And that particular day, the movies had let out about the time that she was on the bus between 5 and 5:30. So there were a few more whites getting on the bus. And of course, it was customary that the white bus drivers would tell the Black people, make it easy on yourselves, give up those seats, move on to the back. Well, the other 3 people on Mrs. Parks's row got up and moved. But we know the history, right? Mrs. Parks told them no, and as a result, she was arrested. So it is so wonderful now that she's being honored, and that history is being preserved in this same location. The Southern Poverty Law Center, Civil Rights Memorial. You all, the Southern Poverty Law Center is still doing great work, tracking hate groups around the world and educating us about them. And this location, the museum has closed for now, which is inside, but the outdoor memorial was designed by Maya Lin, who also designed the Vietnam Memorial in Washington, D.C. And so I invite you, whenever you can, come to Montgomery. That disc you see has the names of 41 people who were killed during the civil rights movement. And so that wall that has until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness as a mighty stream, there's water falling down over that wall. And so it's quite a beautiful sight. The Freedom Rides Museum, this is the location at the Greyhound, the former Greyhound bus station, where the Freedom Riders on May 20th, 1961 were beaten when they arrived to this bus station. And so now it is a museum. It's the Freedom Rides Museum, and they tell the story even on the outside of the building. Those boards that you see with photographs, they are telling the story of what happened that day. The Mothers of Gynecology, I told you about Dr. James Marion Sims, who did many procedures on Black enslaved girls with no consent and no anesthesia. Many of them died, but there were 3 whose names were known: and Arca, Betsy, and Lucy. Michelle Browder, who is one of my dear colleagues as a tour guide in this city, who actually spoke to me to start my own business, and so I love her dearly, is the sculptor of this work. It is masterful, as you can see, and it's welded art. And she's telling the story of 3 of these girls who were operated on by him. And so we're now able to include this story. So when you come to Montgomery, please come to visit the Mothers of Gynecology. What a story is told, because they were all teenage girls. The Harris House, this is a house that is a historic landmark, because this is where the Freedom Riders were hidden for 4 days after they had been beaten at the bus station and attacked at the First Baptist Church. This is where they hid those Freedom Riders. And it's also a house because it's 3 houses from the Dexter Parsonage. It's a place where Dr. King could go to gather, to strategize. He could go to rest. It's an amazing house inside, well built, and it's a huge house. So Dr. Richard Harris and his wife Vera owned this house. And Mrs. Vera Harris, until she died in 2019, I believe it was, would sit on this veranda, and she would welcome visitors that would come to the parsonage, and they would sit on the veranda and talk to her, and she would share with them all about the civil rights history and about their lives. And so as the director of tourism for tour director, Dexter, I had this little plate made, placed it on this veranda that says, Vera Harris, you welcomed the world from here, to just thank her for, and to preserve that history of her welcoming so many people from around the world. The Benmore Hotel is on the Green Book. It's in the Green Book. Some of you may know of it. This is right on the corner from the Harris House. All of these, the Dexter Parsonage, the Harris House, and Benmore Hotel are right there in the same proximity. This is where Dr. King and all of the top Black entertainers could come. And it was a 28-room hotel. Down on the street level, as you see, was the Majestic Cafe. And on that top level was what was called the Rooftop Inn or the Afro Club. The Rooftop Club, not a rooftop inn, but the Rooftop Club, because a lot of clubbing and dancing and having a good time took place up there. And that's where our Black entertainers, B.B. King, James Brown, the Commodores, Ivy and Tina Turner, all those top performers came to perform at that club. And so we're working now to have, and the mayor, out of the mayor's office, they're all working now to have this whole district renovated now. So we look forward to see what this is going to become. Well, we're leaving Montgomery and we're now come to Selma. Welcome to Selma, everybody. With that, here's the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And many visitors come to walk the bridge. I don't know how many of you have possibly walked the bridge already. Yay, Lori. But to all of you, all right, Miss Gwendolyn Miller. Yes, and I'm sure there's some others of you that have probably been here to walk the bridge, but I invite you to come to Selma. Selma has maintained that historic presence about it from 1965 when the Selma to Montgomery March took place there. So it has that charm. And the Selma Interpretive Center is on the corner across the bridge, across from the bridge. And Selma is just really quaint. So I just wanted to share a few scenes with you. This is the bridge. And this is over the Alabama River. I just want to say the Alabama River changed its name 3 times. Down about 10 miles before you get to Mobile, it's called the Mobile Bay. And then you come up about 10 miles above Selma, it's the Alabama River. And then about 10 miles from Selma up to Rome, Georgia, it is the Coosa River. Just a little trivia. Well, this is the St. James Hotel. You all, this past year, they did a multi-million-dollar renovation of this hotel. So you can now have a place to go and stay in Selma. And I'm looking forward to having an overnight stay there. It's very beautiful inside. This is Brown Chapel AME Church in Selma, that historic church where the marchers left from and came back to in Selma for the Selma to Montgomery March. And I added in the headstone for Viola Liuzzo. I don't know how many of you are familiar with her, but I just want you to know that Viola was the only white woman killed during that Selma to Montgomery March during the Civil Rights Movement. She was from Detroit, Michigan, had 5 children and a husband, but she felt compelled to come to help in the Selma to Montgomery March. And she was killed after having a young man named Leroy Moulton in the car with her as she was driving marchers back and forth to and from Selma. So this is the location, marker 111, where she was killed. And so it is now a memorial place there. And then we're back in Montgomery. So I placed our city fountain on this slide and our RSA Tower photograph. That's the Retirement Systems of Alabama. And they own quite a few buildings and they have a lot of money. And they own the Robert Trent Jones golf courses. They are, I think, about 3 or 4 of them in Alabama. So they make a lot of money for this state. Well, I have a dream. We're celebrating Dr. King, and everybody can be great because everybody can serve. Today, everybody, I hope you did something to help somebody else, because that's what this is, a day of service. So what I did Before I got on this call with you, I took a half hour and I walked around the square block and picked up trash, okay? So it looks a little better around here. So that was my contribution. So here, our title was Discovering Dr. King's Dream, Now and Then. And we continue it. And so I just wanted to say from my company, be love and be light. I can't wait to see you. So now at this point, I want us to talk. Let's talk, everyone. And I want to start off by just posing to everybody. There are so many human rights, social justice, and civil rights issues on the table that are present with us every day. Child hunger, LGBT issues, homelessness, women's rights, voting rights, affordable health care, faith issues, taking care of our seniors and our migrant workers in this country, and just the diversity of us as a race. I wanted to present that to you all before we go into our question and answer. And I want to say to everybody, this lady, if you are not familiar with her, Claudette Colvin is a distant cousin on my daddy's side of the family, and she just moved to Corpus Christi, Texas with her son. But I want you all to know, at age 15, before Rosa Parks was arrested, Claudette was arrested on March 2nd, 1955. She was given permanent probation because she was a juvenile, and it went through family court, through the juvenile court. And it was on December 16th of 2021, at age 82, that her record has now been expunged. Will you all please give God and Judge Calvin Williams some love? I was on the advocacy team that worked to get her record expunged, and I'm so very grateful for that. And I'm happy for Claudette that she was still able to live and enjoy her expungement, to enjoy this season of her life. Well, voting rights today, we're still pressing to deliver voting rights. And this a little slide I put up about still the $15 an hour for wage, increasing of wages, minimum wage. So now I want to find out, maybe I should just wait a second and let you ask your questions before I then ask you mine. So Laura, you want to lead, or you want to ask if anybody have a question at this time?
Yes, because I want to get back to and let Miss Wanda be able to have the closing words, and then we're going to turn to my colleague, Denise Davis, who's going to close us out for the evening. Obviously, these are roundtable conversations that are worthy of having, and my hope would be that if you're not involved in the League of Women Voters Delaware, that you become involved, and we can help you become involved. Or if you're from another state, get involved in the state that you're at, or where you are, because certainly collective voice is going to be very important to our democracy. And that's something that during the civil rights movement, I so admired about the leaders. Dr. King had a prophetic voice, there were others, and together they really lifted each other's voices up. And to me, that's where the impact is, on collective voice. And if we're ever going to get to benevolent or beloved communities, we have to be able to join together. And I'm going to turn to you. I want to thank everyone for their patience during that time of question and answer and discussion. And I want to turn back to Miss Wanda to give her closing words, and then we're going to turn to Denise to close us out.
Let's see, I'm unmuted. Very good. Everybody, I want to thank you for engaging this conversation. I want to encourage everyone to continue to have these conversations. I want them to be difficult because I want you to think about all of these different issues and make a decision how you're going to treat people who are different from yourself. This is not a political issue. It is a self-moral, what do you believe in issue. It's how you're living every day with those who live next to you, those who live in your household, who are neighbors, those who you work with on a job, those who you go to church with. How are you treating people every day? Dr. King said, love and help somebody every day. Let love rule your life. Forgive people. All of us are flawed. With that, live every day being your best person. Don't compare yourself with anybody. I was suicidal twice because I was busy comparing myself to you, and I made you smarter and prettier and more gifted and talented, and I pushed myself back. But now I understand clearly that we are all a part of the tapestry, and every one of us have a place in the whole picture. If your piece is missing, it's not complete. If mine is missing, it's not complete. Take your place in this tapestry of world planet and make a difference every day by loving and helping somebody every day and being your best person. With that being said, I want to tell you that it takes courage to speak truth, to speak your position to people. But I'm going to encourage everybody on this call to do like I have come to understand. I have a voice, and my voice matters. So step into yours. Who knows whose life you will change? Thank you all very much.
So before Denise closes out, I just want to, on my personal, for me, and on behalf of the league from me, I just want to say thank you. But on a personal note, I want to say, since I know her personally, thank you, Miss Wanda. Thank you for your love and your authenticity and your courage to speak your truth. There are very few people out in the world who will share their real story. And when we can share our truth, when we can share our stories, is when we can really have, we are imbued with the courage to speak up to others. And I think we all need to have that courage. And I'm going to turn it over to Denise for closing words.
Thank you, Lori. And I, again, want to thank Miss Wanda Battle for your inspiration, your wonderful words, and this extensive eye-opening walk through history this evening, which we all know is the seat of the civil rights movement, Montgomery, Alabama, through all of what you have provided us with in the past, as well as the current context. You bring all of this information to us through your words and your experience, as well as the visual content that you provide to us, which really brings it all to life. And, you know, we are all trapped with COVID, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful experience for us to be able to see this, even, you know, given the limitations that we have. So thank you again for all of that. We appreciate having had this experience, and on this very important day, walking through this virtual tour with you and you guiding us through it, and we're so greatly enriched for it. We really want to thank you very much for all that you do and being part of this experience with us this evening. We hope that we'll be able to see you soon in October with Lori, so we're looking forward to that. This informative program has been sponsored by the nonprofit Create Safe Space and their new initiative, Delawareans for Benevolent Community, as well as the League of Women Voters in Delaware, under the tutelage of our president, Gwendolyn Miller, and her wonderful leadership. So we are thankful for the support of these organizations that allowed us to bring this very important information and this experience to you this evening. Also, we'd like to extend a special thanks to Letty Diswood and Kim Wells, our partners in crime at the League of Women Voters, who have helped us to bring this experience again to you, technical exposure, as well as being able to provide information to you all about the experience. finally, we'd like to thank all of you for your participation this evening and your patience as we had a few technical glitches. It's hard to have 30 people on a call or 35 people on a call and have you participate in live experience. So we had to use the chat, which is kind of awkward, but we thank you for hanging in there with us. And we look forward to seeing you in the future. We're planning a few other things, particularly for Black History Month. So we look forward to seeing you then. And with all of that, until we meet again, we thank you again for all of you participating with us, and we hope you have a pleasant evening.